For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On November 8, 2005, Carlos Mendoza, 34, disappeared while making deliveries for a local courier service during a severe thunderstorm in Guadalajara, Mexico. His delivery van was found abandoned in a flooded intersection, but there was no sign of the experienced driver who had worked the city streets for over 8 years. Local police investigated the case as a possible kidnapping in a city where such incidents were unfortunately common. For 17 years, Carlos's family searched for answers while his disappearance became another unsolved case in Guadalajara's overworked police system. Then, in September 2022, city maintenance workers conducting routine sewer repairs made an unexpected discovery that would finally reveal what happened during that violent storm nearly 2 decades earlier. This is the complete story of Carlos Mendoza's disappearance and the tragic circumstances that kept him hidden beneath the city's streets for 17 years. November 8, 2005, began with unusually heavy rain clouds gathering over Guadalajara as the tail end of Pacific Hurricane Kenneth brought severe weather to western Mexico. Carlos Mendoza started his delivery route at 7:30 a.m. for Mensajeria Rapida, a local courier company where he had built a reputation as one of their most reliable drivers over 8 years of service. Carlos was responsible for the downtown Guadalajara route, delivering documents and packages to businesses throughout the historic city center. His supervisor, Miguel Herrera, later told investigators that Carlos was familiar with every street and alley in his territory and had never missed a day of work due to weather conditions. The 34-year-old father of 2 had loaded his white Ford Transit van with 47 deliveries scheduled throughout the day. His route sheet showed appointments at banks, law offices, and government buildings clustered around Plaza de Armas and the surrounding commercial district where narrow colonial-era streets often flooded during heavy rains. Carlos made his first 3 deliveries successfully, with recipients confirming his arrivals between 8:15 and 9:45 a.m. However, as the storm intensified throughout the morning, several businesses along his route began closing early, and many of his scheduled appointments were canceled or postponed. His last confirmed delivery was at the Banco Santander branch on Avenida Juarez at 11:20 a.m. The bank manager, Rosa Vega, remembered Carlos mentioning that the flooding was getting worse and he was concerned about navigating some of the older areas of the city where drainage systems were inadequate for severe storms. When Carlos failed to return to the Mensajeria Rapida depot by 6 p.m. as scheduled, Supervisor Herrera initially wasn't alarmed. The storm had caused widespread flooding and traffic disruptions throughout Guadalajara, and drivers often ran hours behind schedule during severe weather events. However, when Carlos didn't respond to radio calls and failed to check in by 8 p.m., Herrera contacted the Guadalajara Metropolitan Police. The dispatcher explained that emergency services were overwhelmed with storm-related incidents and that missing delivery drivers would be investigated once immediate rescue operations were completed. The search began the following morning when the worst of the flooding had receded. Carlos's van was discovered at 9:30 a.m. in the intersection of Calle Morelos and Calle Pedro Loza, an area known for poor drainage that frequently flooded during heavy rains. The vehicle was partially submerged but accessible, sitting in about 2 feet of standing water. Detective Inspector Ramon Silva arrived at the scene to examine the abandoned van. His report noted that the vehicle's engine was flooded and inoperable, but there were no signs of collision damage or forced entry. The driver's door was found open, suggesting Carlos had exited voluntarily, possibly to assess the flooding situation or seek help. Inside the van, investigators found Carlos's personal belongings including his wallet, cell phone, and identification, along with approximately 30 undelivered packages. The packages were water damaged but intact, ruling out robbery as a motive for his disappearance. The investigation initially focused on the possibility of kidnapping, unfortunately common in Guadalajara during the mid-2000s when drug cartel activity was increasing throughout Jalisco state. Detective Silva interviewed Carlos's family and co-workers about any threats or unusual incidents that might have preceded his disappearance. Carlos's wife, Patricia Mendoza, told investigators that her husband had never mentioned feeling threatened or concerned about his safety. Their financial situation was stable, and Carlos had no known debts or connections to criminal activity that might make him a target for kidnapping. The courier company's records showed Carlos had been making deliveries to the same downtown businesses for years and was well known among his regular customers. Several business owners contacted police to express concern about his disappearance and offer any assistance with the investigation. Witnesses in the area where the van was found provided conflicting accounts of the flooding situation on November 8. Some residents remembered seeing a delivery van stuck in high water around midday, but no one recalled seeing the driver or any suspicious activity in the intersection. The storm had caused significant damage throughout Guadalajara, with several people requiring rescue from flooded vehicles and buildings. Emergency services had been stretched thin, responding to dozens of water-related emergencies throughout the metropolitan area. As days turned into weeks without progress, the investigation expanded to consider whether Carlos might have been swept away by floodwaters while attempting to move his van or seek higher ground. The city's storm drainage system was notoriously inadequate for severe weather, and several people had drowned in previous flooding incidents. Detective Silva organized searches of the drainage canals and retention areas downstream from where the van was found. Teams checked culverts, storm drains, and the channels that carried runoff toward the Santiago River, but found no evidence of Carlos or his remains. The family organized their own search efforts, posting flyers throughout the city and offering a reward for information about Carlos's whereabouts. Local media covered the story, generating tips and reported sightings, but none led to concrete evidence about what happened during the storm. Patricia Mendoza contacted other families of missing persons in Guadalajara, joining support groups that had formed as kidnapping and disappearances became more common in the region. However, Carlos's case differed from typical kidnappings because no ransom demand was ever made, and his abandoned van suggested circumstances related to the storm rather than criminal activity. Private investigators hired by the family focused on the possibility that Carlos had sought shelter during the flooding and might have been trapped or injured in a building or underground area. However, searches of basements and drainage tunnels in the area yielded no results. Throughout 2006 and 2007, the case remained active but without new leads. Detective Silva continued following up on reported sightings and tips from the public, but none provided breakthrough information. The investigation became part of Guadalajara's growing list of unsolved missing persons cases. Carlos's family never stopped searching for answers. Patricia maintained contact with police investigators and organized annual memorial events that kept his case visible in local media. Their children, who had been 8 and 11 when their father disappeared, grew up wondering what had happened during that stormy November day. The case occasionally received renewed attention when other missing persons were found, or when flooding incidents reminded people of the dangerous conditions that had existed on November 8, 2005. However, as years passed, active investigation efforts diminished while the case remained officially open. In 2010, human remains found in a drainage canal near downtown Guadalajara initially raised hopes for resolution, but forensic analysis determined they belonged to a different missing person from several years earlier. The discovery highlighted how the city's complex underground infrastructure could conceal evidence for extended periods. Urban development in Guadalajara accelerated throughout the 2010s, with new construction and infrastructure improvements changing the landscape where Carlos had disappeared. Some family members worried that development might be covering or destroying evidence that could have solved the case. September 14, 2022, began as a routine maintenance day for the Guadalajara Municipal Water Authority crew working on aging sewer infrastructure in the downtown area. The team was conducting preventive repairs on large drainage pipes that had been installed decades earlier and were prone to blockages and structural problems. Maintenance supervisor Eduardo Ruiz was overseeing work on a major sewer line that ran beneath Calle Morelos, approximately 200 meters from where Carlos's van had been found 17 years earlier. The crew was using specialized equipment to clear debris and inspect the pipe's condition when they encountered an unexpected obstruction. Around 2:45 p.m., maintenance worker Jorge Castillo was operating a remote camera system inside the 1.2-meter diameter concrete pipe when he noticed what appeared to be clothing and possibly human remains lodged in a section where the pipe curved toward a larger collector tunnel. The discovery prompted immediate notification of emergency services and police. Within hours, a specialized urban rescue team was working to access the confined area where the remains had been found. The location was extremely difficult to reach, requiring cutting through street pavement and excavating around the buried pipe system. What they found confirmed the family's worst fears while finally providing answers to Carlos's disappearance. Human remains, along with a Mensageria Rapida uniform shirt and identification bearing Carlos's name, were recovered from the sewer pipe where they had been trapped for 17 years. The Jalisco State Forensic Services Institute conducted detailed analysis of the remains and evidence found in the sewer system. Despite the challenging conditions and passage of time, enough evidence remained to confirm Carlos's identity and begin reconstructing what had happened during the 2005 storm. Forensic experts determined that Carlos had likely entered the storm drainage system voluntarily, possibly seeking shelter from the severe flooding or attempting to retrieve something that had been washed into a drain opening. The configuration of the pipe system suggested he had become trapped when water levels rose rapidly during the storm. The location where his remains were found was part of an older section of Guadalajara's drainage infrastructure, built in the 1960s with inadequate safety features and emergency exits. During severe flooding, water could rush through these pipes with tremendous force, making escape impossible for anyone caught inside. Investigation of the pipe system revealed that Carlos had likely entered through a large storm drain opening near where his van was abandoned. The opening, which was normally above street level, would have been accessible during the flooding when water levels made it appear to be a safe refuge from the rising water. Personal items found with Carlos's remains included his wristwatch, wedding ring, and the delivery company radio he had been carrying. The items had been preserved by the dry conditions in the elevated section of pipe where his remains were discovered, providing crucial evidence for identification. The discovery brought closure to Patricia Mendoza and her family after 17 years of uncertainty. While devastating to learn the circumstances of Carlos's death, they finally had answers about what happened during that terrible storm and could properly lay him to rest. The case highlighted significant safety issues with Guadalajara's aging storm drainage infrastructure. City officials announced plans to improve safety features on storm drains and develop better emergency protocols for severe weather events that could trap people in drainage systems. The maintenance crew that discovered Carlos's remains was recognized for their professional handling of the situation and their sensitivity to the family's needs during the recovery process. Their careful work ensured that evidence was preserved and that Carlos could be properly identified. Patricia Mendoza expressed gratitude to everyone who had continued searching for her husband over the years, including police investigators, volunteers, and media outlets that had kept his story alive. She noted that while the outcome was tragic, finally knowing the truth allowed the family to begin healing. The courier company where Carlos had worked had long since closed, but former colleagues and customers who remembered him attended memorial services held after his remains were discovered. Many described him as a dedicated worker who would have tried to help others during the dangerous flooding conditions. Carlos Mendoza's story serves as a tragic reminder of the hidden dangers that urban flooding can create, particularly in cities with aging infrastructure that wasn't designed for extreme weather events. His attempt to seek shelter or help during the storm led to a trap that claimed his life and concealed his fate for nearly 2 decades. The 17-year delay in discovering his remains illustrates how complex urban underground systems can hide evidence even in heavily populated areas. Despite extensive searches in 2005 and subsequent years, Carlos had been just meters away from where investigators had focused their efforts. For Guadalajara's emergency management and infrastructure departments, the case provided important lessons about storm drainage safety and the need for better coordination between different city departments during crisis situations. Improved mapping and safety protocols were implemented partly in response to this tragedy. The persistence of Carlos's family in keeping his case active contributed to the eventual resolution when his remains were found. Their advocacy helped ensure that investigators took the discovery seriously and conducted thorough identification procedures. Urban development and infrastructure maintenance continue to reveal evidence from decades-old cases throughout Mexico and other countries with aging city systems. Carlos's case demonstrates how routine maintenance work can unexpectedly provide closure for families who have waited years for answers. The case ultimately shows how natural disasters can create dangerous situations that aren't immediately apparent, particularly in urban environments where storm water management systems may become death traps during severe weather. Carlos's dedication to completing his work during the storm reflected his commitment to his job and family, but also highlighted the need for better safety protocols during extreme weather events. As of 2022, improvements to Guadalajara's storm drainage system include better safety features and emergency access points designed to prevent similar tragedies. Carlos's story continues to remind city workers and residents about the importance of staying clear of storm drains and flood control systems during severe weather, no matter how safe they might appear.